Hello and welcome to the second episode of TEFL Talk, the new podcast from I and Love TEFL, talking you through the TEFL journey. My name's Jordan. I've worked in TEFL for the past 2 years. I started out as a TEFL teacher in Vietnam for a couple of years, and now I work here as a TEFL expert at I. Today on the show, I'm joined by Lewis. Hi Lewis, how you doing?
Hi Jordan, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. Great. Lewis is a TEFL teacher who's taught abroad in Mexico for 3 years, and he's also taught online from the UK too. I currently know he's doing that at the moment. So thanks to our listeners for joining us today. As a big thanks for listening, we're going to give you an exclusive discount code from I at the end of the show. So keep listening. In today's show, we're going to be talking all about teaching online. It's the fastest growing area of TEFL and something that lots of our students are interested in. First, we're going to answer a couple of online teaching questions from our listeners. Okay, so I've got a few questions here, been passed on to the company. Thanks for coming in, Lewis. We'll go through these together, but I'll answer the first one myself. So Robin sent us a question asking if it is possible to teach English online if you don't have a degree. We have lots of people asking us this, especially as you do see a lot of jobs that are published online for online tutoring that do request a degree. However, there are jobs boards out there that are solely catered to those who do not have a degree. So there are hundreds of different online tutoring organizations that do have varying requirements regarding degrees, passports, experience, types of TEFL qualification and levels of assessment. So they do vary, but there's certainly a market for online tutors who don't have a degree. Do speak to Love TEFL and the team here at I TEFL regarding those jobs boards. Okay, well, we've got question 2 from Sonia. Sonia asks, how do I go about teaching online? What should I look out for in terms of pay, hours, lesson planning, etc.? Well, this is a great point to introduce Lewis, who's been teaching online. He's got quite a bit of experience. And sort of, Lewis, could you tell us a bit more about teaching online and sort of answering Sonia's question about how she goes about it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked for a couple of different companies online, and they're both quite radically different in their approach. So I worked for one company called 51 Talk, which was based in China, and that was teaching children. And they had kind of formatted, scripted lesson plans that I had to stick to. And they had 3 pay gradients. So depending on your experience and how long you'd worked for the company, you went up sort of from $15, $17, $19 an hour, something like that. And they were short 30, 40-minute classes because they were catered for children, so, less attention span and so on.
Yeah.
And the current platform I work on is called Verbling, and that's completely different. I choose my own pay, I choose my own hours. So it's really, really flexible. The downside, of course, you do have to plan your own classes for that one. So it really depends. There's loads of different companies out there, and they all offer different things, really.
Well, that's really great to hear because, we always talk about how versatile teaching online is, how much they can be offered, because there's so many different organizations out there that provide so many different experiences with creating your own curriculum like you do, being provided the curriculum, tailoring your hours and your pay. And yeah, there's obviously lots of organizations out there that do cater to lots of different audiences. So just to kind of round out really what Lewis said, your experiences are going to vary because there's so many organizations out there. Now, the great thing is that here at I TEFL and Love TEFL, we have qualifications that will qualify you for those opportunities, but also provide information about all these different organizations. But that's great. Okay, well, we'll move on to the next question, Lewis. Tia asks, if I want to teach online first, can I teach abroad later on down the line? Or vice versa. So I think what she's saying there is, can she teach first online and then teach abroad, or do it the other way around? So it's a bit like what you've done, really. I mean, you were teaching overseas and then you began teaching online.
Yeah, I started in a classroom, and I think for me, I wouldn't have had the confidence just to go straight into one-on-one tutoring online had I not had the experience first and made all the errors in the classroom. But some people perhaps would find it easier to be more intimate and teach one-on-one than to get in front of a big class full of kids or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it completely depends.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine it is quite personal. I mean, some people may struggle to go into that classroom experience. Some people might find it a bit more intimate teaching online. I completely understand that. I mean, the great thing is it's always really good to be able to get some kind of practical education in your qualification before you do something like this. But to sort of wedge you up and get you confident either for online tutoring or teaching abroad. I mean, what did you prefer? Did you prefer teaching online or teaching abroad?
Well, what I will say is I think teaching online is a little easier in the sense that often you have older people or adults anyway who can afford to pay for personal tutors, and they want to learn. You know, in the classroom, the kids kind of have to be there, and it's not always, you know, they don't always want to learn
always
English
complicit.
necessarily. Exactly,
Yeah.
It's not always easy to kind of keep their attention, but online, whoever, you know, your students paying you money to learn, and often it's conversation-based classes. I find I have a lot of students online who just want to consolidate their English or to practice, or they've previously learned it and they want to just have a bit of extra time with a native speaker. You know, sometimes they don't have teachers who are native English speakers, so a lot of the time it's conversation classes, and it's easy, frankly.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, yeah.
Well, I mean, thanks for all your questions, everyone. Obviously, next time around, we'll get some more questions. But now we're going to delve a bit deeper into the world of teaching English online and hear from Lewis, who's taught online for a number of years. Now, Lewis, how easy was it for you to find online teaching jobs? Obviously, what we discussed is that you'd previously been working in Mexico, and then from working in a language center, you moved to online tutoring. But how easy was that process?
It was really easy. So I was working in Mexico, and at my particular school, I wasn't getting as much as I perhaps wanted to get. So I'd heard other teachers were earning money online on the side as, you know, additional hours. So I did a Google search and found a few different platforms. I applied for one, and all they wanted was proof that I'd had teaching experience and a TEFL certificate. That's all they needed, really.
Brilliant.
So it was really easy. Once I got accepted, the first job I worked at was the Chinese-based the China-based company, as I said.
Yeah.
And I didn't get along with that too much because it was children, and I prefer teaching adults.
Right. Okay.
So then I just found Verbling, which was, I actually found it from a YouTube advert. You know, obviously they'd cottoned.
Ah, nice one.
Google
Okay.
had cottoned on that I was searching for that, and then they advertised it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I clicked on that.
Yeah.
And I just applied like a job application. I got the message back saying I'd been accepted. My profile is live, and I just had to go on there, create a video, create an introduction paragraph, and write my experience. Open whatever schedule I wanted to open. So I was opening sort of 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. when I got back from my day centre job.
Yeah.
And then I started getting bookings within a few days, and you know, it was dry at first because I hadn't built an online reputation, but over a few weeks, it got to the point where I was refusing students.
Right.
So
yeah, too many.
Too many. Yeah, there's
brilliant.
loads of it's
Loads of opportunities. That's brilliant. And also, it's really interesting to hear as well the fact that a lot of teachers out there build up a bit of a preference regarding ages. Like you have some, like for example, when I was teaching overseas, I really enjoyed teaching teens. I didn't think I would, but I liked the rapport, the ability to be able to communicate at a higher level, and that you found that you didn't really have a passion for teaching children. Teaching adults was something you'd prefer to do, and it's good to know there's a market out there that's abundant that you can teach a particular age range. That's really cool. So you explained really that there's lots of different organisations you can teach for, but how different is teaching online compared to teaching a class full of kids? You know, when obviously you've explained that with one particular organisation, you had to create your own syllabus, your curriculum, your own lessons. But what about the experience from teaching a group of 20, 30, 40 people to tailoring it to one individual?
Well, surprisingly, I think you'd think that having a class full of students is more difficult, but maybe online is a little more challenging because it's intense, one-on-one. You have to answer all their questions. You can kind of set activities in the classrooms and disappear and monitor and so on for periods. So I think online is maybe more challenging at first, but actually I really prefer it. Because once you become more comfortable with it, and it's like any job, you're nervous in the beginning, but once you know that they're also nervous on the other side of the screen, and it's quite easy to forget that they're the one learning and they're the one speaking another language. So for them it's more daunting than it's for you, and they don't know that you're nervous. So
absolutely.
In the beginning.
So at the beginning can be quite challenging. I can imagine that once you've learned those particular skills, it can be quite easy then, much easier to sort of control. I think that's pretty much the same with all the sort of mediums of teaching. I remember when I was teaching in a class, when you're first starting, it's really difficult to perhaps control a classroom of children of 40 to 50 kids. But then when you learn those classroom management skills, when you're learning how to control behaviour, it becomes much easier. But I imagine there are good and positive, positive and negative to both. I remember teaching online for a little while and found it a challenge to begin with because it is very personable. It's very intense, sitting face to face with a child. But
the time flies by as well. So you've got to be attentive, and before you know it, the hour's finished, or half an hour depending on how long it is, and it's really enjoyable, and I think the student gets a lot out of it because they're having one-to-one focused classes.
Sort of a bit of a general question, really. What advice would you give someone wanting to get online TEFL teaching? I mean, what do they need? So we often get asked questions, technical questions sometimes about setting themselves as an online tutor, but also really just generally getting themselves mentally equipped for online tutoring. Have you got any advice from your own experience?
Yeah, I'd definitely say it seems obvious, but I don't know if all teachers do it, but you have to be interactive, you have to have your presentations, and you have to have things set up ready. I mean, obviously you need to have a good camera, microphone. They're the kind of basic requirements. I forgot to say before, that was one of the requirements for the teaching position. They test your internet connection and test all that to make sure the signal is good. But I'd say the most difficult thing is correcting errors and stuff. In a classroom you have a whiteboard or whatever, you can go and so you've got to type everything, which can be a challenge. I've known other teachers to use writing tools, like those USB kind of plug-in.
I know.
So they're really useful because then you can just share your screen and they can see everything you're writing. Right. If you can get your hands on one of those, it's probably worth. I wish I'd bought one of those sooner.
Right, okay.
Also, just general advice. I have a MacBook and I have the camera on there, and then obviously you want them to be able to see you kind of shoulders up. So I had to put it on a box in the beginning, and I had all kinds of setups in my study, where I was working from. So getting a little USB keyboard is probably quite useful, so that you're not. You don't have your arms like hanging in the air. Be careful when you're sharing your screen. Make sure you don't have anything open that you don't want them to see. And it's all about just appearing like you're more professional. And
sure.
Other than that, I'd say be presentable as well. It's just like a classroom. I mean, just because you're online, it doesn't mean you can. Although I have had many classes in pyjama bottoms because they can't see your legs, so it's quite easy like that.
Well, that's great. And I think presentation is really important, especially as working independently. You're kind of managing your own business, and if you are trying to build some kind of profile, a reputation, that's really ideal and something to take into consideration whenever you are teaching. How do you look? How does the room look? I think that is really important. Now. It is becoming very popular to teach online, often because it is very flexible. What sort of hours do you work at the moment, and what have you done in the past?
So I think this is the biggest benefit of working online. It's super versatile, really flexible. So in the beginning, as I said before, I was just picking up extra hours just for some extra pay and also extra experience. Teaching online was the first experience I had of teaching adults actually as well, which was useful. But then I actually started working full-time online, and most of these websites all of these websites actually, from my experience, you can choose your hours. It's so flexible. So if you want to work after another, as a subsidy for another job, you can add extra hours. It's quite easy to do that. It's really flexible. At the moment, I work at a language school in the UK, but I also work online as well. So every day I finish, go home, and then have a couple of hours extra classes online. And if I wanted to, lead up to Christmas or something, I can open more slots to have more classes. It's really flexible. It's great.
So when you choose your own hours, does that mean, do you try and keep a regular pattern? So you're keeping the same students, or are you establishing when you're free and the same students you've taught before come back to you, or do you regularly get different students?
Yeah, I found in the past that it's best to be consistent with your schedule, have a pattern, and then you can have the same. Obviously, students are looking. They've got to have classes that fit around their own life as well. Yeah. So obviously they might be working and whatever, But
you try to see them again and again and again?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, most of these online platforms, they can buy a single class, they can buy blocks of 5 or 10 or 20 and things like that. And they're only going to buy those blocks and give you more income, if they can regularly have classes with you. So it depends. Also, if you're opening, in the past I've opened slots on the weekend, and I've found that I've had more students from Latin America and things like that, because it's a different time zone. And then opening classes at nights, I have more Korean, Chinese, Japanese students. So it kind of depends. Your clientele might, the nationalities of your students might depend on when you're opening slots. Definitely be consistent though if you want those regular bookings. Sure. Because people want to be able to schedule in, I have my English class online with Lewis or whatever every Tuesday at 8 p.m. It's probably a good idea to do that,
No, that's brilliant. And so, I mean, the great thing about TEFL now, that it is a worldwide market. So what you're saying is when you teach, depending on the time frame that you use, you're approaching a different part of the world, obviously due to the difference in hours. But so what, when you're teaching in the evening, you're mostly teaching in Asia, teaching online, but teaching in the morning it's more South America, or is it the other way around?
It'd be the other way around.
Other way around, I thought, sorry.
Also, I'm coming at this from thinking about when I was in Mexico. I built up a lot of my student base in Mexico, and then I've moved over to England. I've kind of had to start again a little bit, that's the problem. But
that's cool. That's awesome. That's brilliant. That's great. So we've covered obviously a lot of topics regarding your online tutoring. I mean, is it something you think you could do as a full-time career?
Oh, absolutely. I did it for about 18 months full-time. And this was once I built up a bit of a student base working when I was working at the school, as I said. But then, for a long time I did it online, and you can definitely earn money from it. Absolutely, lots
brilliant.
of money,
Well, we at the moment have got some quite highly sought after professional qualifications that include specialist training and online tutoring, but also in teaching business English. Now, myself, I've seen these jobs boards online where they do have online tutoring for business English. And you were telling me earlier, it's not something you've not so much experienced, but catering to specific audiences, is that something you've come across when trying to tutor online? To like different age groups, different sort of capabilities? Are there opportunities that do tailor to specific markets?
Yeah, there are. So teaching online, I've had people come and ask me specifically for business English, specifically for TEFL or Cambridge or IELTS exams. And even I've had students ask me for specific vocabulary. I'm studying an engineering degree, can you blah, blah, blah. But it depends. Some companies, as I said, I worked for an online company, which was a Chinese company, and they taught children specifically. So that was Go on, I've forgotten your question. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
What did you say again?
No, it's about yeah. So just teaching for different audiences.
Different audiences,
Yeah,
of course
yeah,
it was.
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose that is that an okay answer?
Yeah, that's a good answer. No, it's fine. It's
all
fine.
right
Yeah, it's fine. There's something I really wanted to ask because we have a lot of people that come to us. When they get qualified to teach in specific areas around the world. Asia being a very popular location, South America as well. But you taught in Mexico. Why Mexico?
Yeah, good question. Everybody asks me this. I think mainly I wanted to learn Spanish. That was it. That was mainly the reason. But then after I did my course, I searched for all kinds of jobs. Spain just seemed too close for me, too close to home. You know, I wanted to kind of really be out there and experience it. And I'd wanted to travel in South America anyway, or Central America even. They don't like you saying South America and Mexico. It's very Central America. So I applied for jobs. I had a job interview in, a Skype interview for Colombia and Mexico. I just had a better feel from the Mexican school. The guy interviewing me was more professional. He was more prepared, and I didn't know anything about either country really. I don't know why I chose Mexico.
No, that's great. That's awesome. It sounds like you had a good time as well. We had a chat earlier.
Definitely recommend it. It's a great culture.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And obviously you're qualified. You've got a mountain of experience. Would this be something you would do overseas in the future?
I'd definitely do it again in a heartbeat. So I came back to England after teaching abroad, and I'm now working in an English language school. But I can't wait to go get away again. As soon as I finish my masters, I plan, in fact, on going abroad again.
Brilliant.
I'm probably going to go somewhere totally different, I think. The temptation is to go to sort of Spain or another Spanish-speaking country. It will be easier for me this time, I think, definitely. But no, I think I'll go to Japan or Korea.
Brilliant.
I've heard a lot of good things, and then also the Middle East is the most lucrative. They pay a lot of money out there, so that's always tempting. You know, go and work for a year and save up your mortgage.
Exactly.
I don't know yet. I really don't know, but I'll definitely do it again.
No, brilliant, fantastic. That's awesome. So Lewis, thank you very much. Sort of wrapping this up. Now, obviously, with a lot of experience that you have, we'd love to hear a few tips about becoming a TEFL teacher.
Okay. I think that when you first qualify, you're terrified. You are, aren't you? When you first get in front of a class, it's really scary.
Yeah.
I'd say students really they realise they're really good at picking up on how you're feeling. So try to relax. I'd say try and just stay one class ahead of the students. You know, I had to. There's lots of times where I had to learn the material, you know, the night before I was teaching it, and I think that's normal in the beginning. Really. Don't worry, because there's a lot to learn on the TEFL course, lots of grammar and things, and just stay one class ahead and don't pretend that you know the answer if you don't. I've made that mistake a few times. Really, if you don't know, tell them you don't know. I'll check that for you and come back. Brilliant. Don't act like you know what you're talking about. I think the students buy into you, so just be personable and be yourself. Don't try and impress the students, especially if they're kids. It really doesn't matter. I think just be yourself, and definitely, especially if you're teaching teens. I was teaching sort of 12 to 14-year-olds for the first year in Mexico, and keep on top of bad behaviour. I'd say you need to be quite authoritative quite quickly. So otherwise, the first job that I worked at, I think I wanted to kind of be the cool teacher. You know, you go in and you want to be that kind of guy, and then they do walk all over you quite quickly if you're not careful.
I think everyone falls into that trap. A lot of people fall in that trap when they initially become TEFL teachers because it seems a lot more casual to what you're used to in your own country, the teaching sort of style. And then when you go out there, you're looking to really enjoy yourself and be a bit of a games master out there, playing lots of different activities for them to learn. But you also want to keep a bit of authority. And that would be my tip, really. You can learn as much as you want about teaching English and the vocabulary, the grammar, but the amount of time that you can focus on your classroom management, having that as one of your top priorities would be essential, I feel, for teaching. When I was teaching out in Vietnam, when I was teaching, I really invested in classroom management, making it as competitive, as entwined within the actual class as possible. So no matter what the subject was, the rules in which you play the games are really entwined with classroom management. So straight away when you start a class, you're establishing teams, so everyone's accountable for their team. You're using rules in place to count up points, and the best behaved teams win. Now you can match that with points to try and win in subject matter and in the classroom sort of objectives, what you're trying to teach them. But ensuring that behaviour is also a massive part of how a team wins, I think is really great when you're trying to conduct a TEFL classroom.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, they love winning, don't they? So
kids
making
love
it competitive is definitely a way forward.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the episode 2 of TEFL Talk. As promised, the exclusive discount code for I2I is TEFL Talk 5. So that's in capital letters. Use this discount code in the discount code field when going to purchase any of our products, and you'll get an extra 5% off. And that's in any of the courses or internships. Just head over to i2i.com to view the full range of products. Thanks so much to everybody listening, and if you've got any burning questions about TEFL, please email us at tefltalk@teachandtravelgroup.com. Episode 3 will be coming to you shortly, so make sure you keep listening. Thank you, Lewis, for joining us on the show.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, it's been a pleasure. Cheers.
And thanks, everyone, and bye for now.
We've been talking TEFL talk, talking TEFL with TEFL talk. We've been talking TEFL talk, talking TEFL with TEFL talk.